Hi, I'm Paul Sharpe, the double bass professor at University of North Carolina School of the Arts. And today I'd like to talk to you about how we stand and stance, that sort of thing. About 10 years ago, I shot a series of videos for D'Addario, the string manufacturer in New York, and I talked about all of the basics about bass playing, and I talked about stance. Since that time, I've had a lot of chance to kind of reflect on everything I said, and I stand by everything, certainly. But I've also grown as a musician, and since that point, where I was sitting mostly, and I've been sitting since I was 26 years old to play the bass, I have now this newfangled end pin. I talked about the bend end pin in the D'Addario videos, and only briefly mentioned it because I hadn't had much experience with it. The thing about this bend in pin is that it's kind of changed how I think about standing in general, and also changed how I sit a little bit. So I thought I'd like to share some of those things with you. First of all, since returning to standing at the age of 49 or whatever it was when I first did this, I think it was 2 years ago, I have really enjoyed just the mobility of my body while I play. It's so important as a musician to feel comfortable and free when you're making music. We're expressive people, and if you see my D'Addario videos, you see me waving my hands all over the place. We're expressive people, and we move when we communicate, and music making at its best is a free communication with people, not using words, but through expressing ourselves. And to be rooted in one place on a stool, I found a little constricting. And then I think there are ways of standing where people actually are not as musically expressive as they could be, because they think of standing as a static kind of experience. A bassist in particular, who's dealing with the enormous weight of an instrument that's leaning against you, can often have trouble, because they think of themselves, well, I've got to be like a fence post, rooted in the ground, just to meet this double bass, which is putting its weight against me. I got to be strong, right? In reality, I think it's much, much better if we think of the bass coming into us as much as us coming into it. So it's like two things leaning against each other, mutually supporting one another, right? So lately I've been positioning my weight forward, more forward. This puts my upper body over the top of my bass a little bit. I'm sticking my rear end out, which is something Paul Ellison said, I don't know, decades ago, and it stuck with me. So you stick your rear end out, bend your knees slightly, and you're mobile. I'm constantly asking my students to sway from side to side, making sure that no one leg gets more weight than another. So with this slightly forward-leaning posture, bass into me, me into the bass, that puts my arm in just the perfect place to get a big resonant tone without working at it, right? The other way of kind of standing and letting the bass rest against you, everything's back. You know, this is not how you play a sport. It's not how you do most things in life. If you want to be, very agile and flexible. So, weight forward, legs loose and mobile, and then you're in this posture to pull a big sound out of your bass. Another thing that I've kind of added into the way I talk about standing with a double bass is that I position the bass, whether I'm standing with a straight pin, whether I'm seated, so that G string, this point right here where the G string is on the bridge, is exactly in the middle of the plane I make with my body. All right? So straight out in front of me, lined up with my center point. That seems to me to be the perfect place to position a bass. at least allowing me to get over to the G string easily without any strain, and then allowing me to get to the E string easily as well. It all works great in that aspect. One thing that, standing with this bent pin has kind of reinforced with me is that actually these strings move in a diagonal across my body, which is exactly what I mimic now when I'm sitting. The bass comes over my left shoulder a little bit more and angles across. I think these concepts brought to me because I switched something up, kind of later in my career, could really help a young person trying to figure out how stance works and things to watch out for as they're switching things up themselves, just trying to figure out why their back hurts or why their shoulder is tired. These things can be so important. The free lower body, the freedom of movement, and then feeling like the bass and you come together. I think it's very helpful. Hope you do too. Thanks for watching.